The rain hammered against the garage windows like nature's own percussion section, each drop a reminder that some storms announce themselves long before they arrive. I stood there at 4:30 in the morning, wrench in hand, staring at the engine of my 1967 Mustang, the one thing in my life that still made sense. My name is Felix Rourde, and I fix things for a living. Engines, transmissions, broken dreams of middle-aged men who think a classic car will bring back their youth. What I couldn't fix, apparently, was my marriage. Felix still playing with his toys? That's what Cambria would say when her friends asked about my hobby. 22 years of marriage, and she still called my passion a toy. Cambria Rourde, my wife, the PR executive who could spin cow manure into gold but couldn't manage to come home before midnight anymore. The garage door to my workshop creaked, and I figured it was the wind. Then I heard heels clicking on concrete. Expensive heels. You must be Felix. I turned around, and standing there was the most striking woman I'd seen in years. Tall, elegant, with silver hair pulled back in a way that screamed money and breeding. She wore a black coat that probably cost more than most people's cars. Depends who's asking, I said, setting down the wrench. And how you got into my garage. Aven Bardell. She extended a manicured hand. And your wife gave me the code. We need to talk. The name hit me like a sledgehammer. Aven Bardell, Porter Keller's wife. Porter, the hotshot attorney who'd been keeping my wife busy with all those late-night strategy sessions. About what? I asked, though something in my gut already knew. About where our spouses are right now. Her smile was sharp enough to cut glass. Get your keys, we're taking a drive. I should have said no, should have asked more questions, but there was something in her eyes, a recognition of shared betrayal that made words unnecessary. Where are we going? I asked, grabbing my jacket. To Porter's office, where your wife is currently demonstrating her dedication to client relations. The rain kept falling as we climbed into my truck. Aven settled into the passenger seat like she belonged there, checking her phone with the casual efficiency of someone about to ruin lives. How long have you known? I asked, backing out of the driveway. 3 months. You? Suspected for 6, confirmed about 30 seconds ago. She laughed, not a happy sound. Porter thinks he's clever. All those late meetings, weekend conferences, business trips to Boston. He's been screwing your wife in his office for months. The windshield wipers fought against the storm as we drove through the empty streets of Carrick Bay. Our little coastal city looked different at this hour, smaller, more vulnerable, like it was holding secrets it couldn't keep much longer. Why now? I asked. Why tonight? Because tonight, they're celebrating. Porter just landed the Morrison account, biggest client his firm's ever had, and your wife convinced him she deserves a special bonus. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. 22 years of marriage, and this was how I found out. From a stranger in my garage at dawn. What's your plan? I asked. Simple. We catch them, document everything. Then we make them pay. I glanced at her. You seem pretty calm for someone whose husband is cheating. Oh, I'm furious, she said, her voice steady as stone. I'm just better at planning revenge than screaming about it. We pulled into the parking garage beneath Porter's building. The place was mostly empty, just a few cars belonging to the cleaning crew and one very familiar silver sedan. That's Cambria's car, I said, and that's Porter's BMW. Aven pointed to a sleek black car parked nearby. Top floor. Corner office. He's very proud of his view. The elevator ride felt like forever. Aven checked her phone again, then pulled out a small camera. Evidence, she explained. My divorce attorney insists on documentation. You've already talked to a lawyer? Honey, I've been planning this divorce since the day I married him. I just needed the right ammunition. The elevator dinged, and we stepped into the law firm's reception area. Plush carpets, expensive furniture, oil paintings of stern-looking judges. The kind of place that charged $500 an hour to tell you what you already knew. Light spilled from under Porter's office door, and sounds that made my stomach turn and my hands clench into fists. Aven moved like a cat, silent and purposeful. She positioned herself by the door, camera ready. "On 3, she whispered. 1, 2. She pushed open the door. "Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories." There they were. My wife of 22 years and her boss, tangled together on his mahogany desk like teenagers in the back seat of a car. Papers scattered on the floor. Cambria's blouse hanging from a lamp. Porter's pants around his ankles. They froze when they saw us. The look on Cambria's face, shock, guilt, defiance all rolled into one, would stay with me forever. "Well," I said, my voice surprisingly steady, "this explains the overtime." Cambria scrambled for her clothes while Porter tried to simultaneously pull up his pants and maintain some shred of dignity. Watching a man try to look authoritative with his underwear showing is almost funny. Almost. "Felix, this isn't what it looks like," Cambria started, the classic line of cheaters everywhere. "Really?" I said, leaning against the doorframe. "Because it looks like my wife is having relations with her boss on company furniture. But hey, maybe I need glasses." Aven snapped photos with professional efficiency. Each flash made Porter flinch like he was being struck. "Aven, put that away," Porter demanded, finally getting his pants up. "This is a private matter." "Private?" Aven laughed. "Darling, you forfeited privacy when you started conducting business meetings in your underwear." Cambria had managed to get her blouse back on, though it was buttoned wrong. Even disheveled and caught red-handed, she was beautiful. That's what made it hurt so much. "We need to talk," she said to me. "Alone." "I think we're past the talking stage," I replied. "Unless you want to explain how many client meetings ended this way." "It's not like that." "Then what is it like, Cambria? Help me understand how 22 years of marriage led to you naked on another man's desk." Porter stepped forward, trying to reassert control. "Look, Felix, I know this is difficult, but—" "Shut up!" The words came out harder than I intended. "You don't get to talk. You don't get to explain. You don't get to do anything except stand there and think about how badly you've screwed up." Aven finished her photography session and tucked the camera away. "I think we have enough evidence. Porter, expect to hear from my attorney. Felix, shall we go?" But I wasn't ready to leave yet. I walked over to Porter's desk, the same desk where my wife had just been writhing around, and picked up a framed photo of him receiving some legal award. "Nice office," I said. "Great view. Must be satisfying, having all this success." I set the photo down carefully. "Too bad you're about to lose it all." "You can't prove anything," Porter said, but his voice cracked. "Can't I?" I pulled out my phone and showed him the screen. "Amazing what you can record these days. Audio quality is incredible." His face went white. "You recorded us?" "The whole conversation, including the part where you discussed billing my wife's services to the Morrison account." That was a lie. I hadn't recorded anything. But Porter's reaction told me everything I needed to know about his business practices. Cambria finally found her voice. "Felix, please. We can work this out. It doesn't have to end this way." "You're right," I said. "It could have ended with honesty, with respect, with you remembering the vows you made." I headed for the door. "Instead, it ends with lawyers." "Wait," she called after me. "Where are you going?" I turned back one last time. "Home, to change the locks." The ride down in the elevator was silent, except for the soft hum of machinery and Aven's satisfied breathing. "That went well," she said as we reached the parking garage. "Did it? I feel like I should be angrier." "Oh, you will be. This is just shock. The anger comes later." along with the planning. We walked to my truck, our footsteps echoing in the concrete space. The storm had passed, but water still dripped from the ceiling, creating small puddles that reflected the fluorescent lights. "What happens now?" I asked. "Now we make them pay. Not just financially, though that's important too. We make them pay in every way that matters. Reputation, career, social standing, everything." I started the engine and backed out of the parking space. "You seem to know a lot about revenge." "I've had time to think about it. Porter's been cheating for years, not just with your wife. I've been collecting evidence, building a case. Tonight was just the final piece of the puzzle." We drove through the quiet streets of Carrick Bay as dawn began to break over the harbor. The city looked different now, like I was seeing it through new eyes. Every familiar landmark seemed changed, tainted by what I'd just witnessed. "Drop me at the corner," Aven said as we neared her neighborhood. "I have calls to make." "What kind of calls?" "The kind that end careers." She gathered her purse and coat. "Porter's up for partner this month. The board meets Thursday. They're very conservative people, old money, old values. They won't appreciate learning about his extracurricular activities." I pulled over and she got out, then leaned down to the window. "Felix, this is just the beginning. If you want real revenge, the kind that makes them regret every choice they made, you'll need to be smart about it. Patient. Can you do that?" "I'm a mechanic," I said. "I know how to take things apart piece by piece." She smiled, and for the first time, it reached her eyes. "Good. I'll be in touch." I watched her walk away, heels clicking on the wet pavement, and realized my life had just changed forever. The Felix who'd gone to bed last night was gone. In his place was someone harder, angrier, and far more dangerous than anyone, especially Cambria and Porter, could imagine. The drive home took 10 minutes. I used every second to think, to plan, to prepare for what came next. By the time I pulled into my driveway, I knew exactly what I was going to do. First, the locks, then the bank accounts, then the real fun would begin. I stopped at Murphy's Hardware on the way home. Old Murphy himself was behind the counter, nursing coffee and reading yesterday's paper. "Little early for home improvement, isn't it, Felix?" he asked, looking up from the sports section. "Emergency repair," I said, grabbing a complete lock set. "You know how it is." "Wife lock you out again?" He chuckled at his own joke. "Something like that." The irony wasn't lost on me. I was about to lock out the woman who'd been locking me out emotionally for months. Back home, I parked in the garage and gathered my tools. Changing locks isn't complicated when you know what you're doing, and I'd been working with my hands for 30 years. The front door took 20 minutes, the back door, another 15. The garage door opener was trickier, but I managed to reprogram it. By 7:30, Cambria's keys were useless. I made coffee and sat at the kitchen table looking out at the harbor. Our house sat on a hill overlooking Carrick Bay, with a view that had sold us on the place 20 years ago. Cambria used to love watching the boats come and go. Now she probably preferred the view from Porter's office. My phone buzzed. Text message from Cambria. "We need to talk, coming home now." I texted back, "No, you're not." The phone rang immediately. "What do you mean, no?" Her voice was sharp, controlled. PR executive mode. "I mean your key won't work anymore. Neither will the garage opener." Silence. Then, "You can't lock me out of my own house." "Our house, and yes, I can. It's amazing what you can accomplish when you're not spending your evenings at the office." "Felix, be reasonable. We can work this out like adults." "Adults don't screw their bosses on office furniture, Cambria. Adults have conversations about marriage problems. Adults show respect for their spouses." "I'm coming over. You're welcome to try." She hung up. I finished my coffee and called my brother-in-law, Mick. "Felix, it's barely 8 in the morning. I need a favor. Can you come over and bring Gage if he's available?" Mick was married to my sister, a good guy who worked construction and understood the value of loyalty. Gage was his partner, built like a linebacker but gentle as a lamb unless you crossed someone he cared about. What's going on? Cambria's been having an affair. I caught them this morning. She's about to show up here demanding to get in. Son of a... He caught himself. We'll be right there. While I waited, I made more calls. First, to the bank. Joint accounts are tricky during a divorce, but I could at least monitor them. Any large withdrawals would require both signatures now. Second call went to Colby Varon, my attorney. We'd gone to college together, and he'd handled the house purchase and my business contracts over the years. Felix, what can I do for you? I need a divorce attorney. The best you know. Okay. Can I ask what happened? I gave him the short version. Colby listened without interruption, making occasional notes. I can handle this myself, he said when I finished. But I have to ask, are you sure you want to go nuclear? Sometimes these things can be worked out. Colby, I found my wife naked with another man, in his office, at dawn, after months of lies. What exactly would we work out? Fair point. I'll draw up papers today. In the meantime, document everything. Keep records of all communication. And Felix? Yeah? Don't do anything stupid, I know you're angry, but I'm not going to hurt anyone. But I'm also not going to make this easy for them. Just remember, revenge feels good in the moment, but it can backfire in court. Who said anything about revenge? I'm just protecting my interests. Mick and Gage arrived 20 minutes later, just as Cambria's silver sedan pulled into the driveway. Perfect timing. That her? Gage asked, peering through the window. That's her. We watched Cambria get out of her car and march to the front door. She still looked beautiful, even angry, especially angry if I was being honest. That had always been part of her appeal, the fire, the passion. Too bad she'd been sharing it with Porter. She tried her key, rattled the handle, then pressed the doorbell repeatedly. Felix, open this door, we need to talk. I opened the window instead. We can talk from here. Let me in. This is my house too. Actually, it's not. Check the deed. My name only. That was true. We'd bought the house before marriage equality extended to property law, and I'd been the only one with credit back then. It was one of those details that never seemed important until it did. You can't do this. I can, and I have. Your stuff is in the garage. I'll leave it unlocked for 1 hour. My stuff? Clothes, personal items, toiletries. Everything else will divide through lawyers. Mick and Gage flanked me at the window, arms crossed, looking like the kind of backup that discourages arguments. Who are these people? Cambria demanded. Witnesses, I said. In case you decide to do something we'll all regret. She stared at me for a long moment, and I saw something I'd never seen before in her eyes. Uncertainty. Cambria had always been in control, always had an angle, always knew how to get what she wanted. This was new territory for her. This is insane, she said finally. I'm calling my attorney. Good idea. Have him call mine. She stormed back to her car, pulled out her phone, and started making calls. I could see her gesturing angrily, pacing back and forth in the driveway. She's something else, Gage observed. Yeah, I just forgot what. After 20 minutes of heated phone conversations, Cambria went to the garage and started loading boxes into her car. Designer clothes, expensive shoes, jewelry I'd bought her for anniversaries and birthdays. Watching her pack up 22 years of marriage into the back of a sedan was surreal. When she finished, she came back to the window. This isn't over, Felix. You're right, it's just beginning. I'll take you for everything you have. You already took everything that mattered. The rest is just money. She got in her car and drove away, tires squealing on the wet pavement. Mick whistled low. She's going to be trouble. Yeah, but not the kind she expects. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to Aven's number. Time for phase 2. Aven suggested we meet at the Mariner's Knot, a locals-only bar down by the docks that served the best fish and chips in Carrick Bay and minded its own business. The kind of place where conversations stayed private and strangers stood out like lighthouses. I arrived first and grabbed a corner booth where we could talk without being overheard. The lunch crowd was typical for a Tuesday. Fishermen, dock workers, a few retirees nursing beers and watching the harbor through salt-stained windows. Aven walked in at exactly 1 o'clock, dressed down in jeans and a sweater but still managing to look like money. She spotted me immediately and slid into the booth across from me. "How did the lockout go?" she asked. "Better than expected. She's officially homeless and furious." "Good. Angry people make mistakes." She signaled the waitress for coffee. "I had a productive morning, too. Porter's been suspended pending a board investigation." "Already?" "I have friends on the board, old family connections. One phone call about his inappropriate workplace behavior was all it took." The waitress brought coffee and took our orders. When she left, Aven leaned forward. "But that's just the beginning. Porter's suspension is temporary unless we give the board something permanent to work with." "What did you have in mind?" "Public humiliation, the kind that makes rehabilitation impossible." She stirred her coffee thoughtfully. "Porter's weakness is his ego. He thinks he's untouchable because he's never faced real consequences. Time to change that." "And Cambria?" "Your wife's weakness is her image. She's built her whole career on being perfect, polished, in control. Take that away, and she has nothing." I liked the way Aven thought. Surgical, precise. She understood that the best revenge wasn't violence. It was making people face the consequences of their choices. "What's your plan?" She pulled out a tablet and showed me a series of photos and documents. "Porter's been embezzling client funds to pay for his lifestyle. The affair with your wife isn't his first, or his most expensive. He's been paying hush money to at least 3 other women." "How do you know all this?" "I've been his wife for 15 years. I know where he keeps his real financial records, and I know his passwords." She swiped through bank statements and email screenshots. "The board will have this information by Thursday morning. That'll destroy him. That's the idea." She closed the tablet. "But I want more than just financial ruin. I want him to understand what it feels like to be betrayed, humiliated, exposed. I want him to lose everything that matters to him, including his reputation, especially his reputation." Our food arrived and we ate in comfortable silence for a while. Outside, fishing boats bobbed in the harbor, their crews preparing for the afternoon run. Normal people doing normal work, not plotting the destruction of cheating spouses. "Tell me about Cambria," Aven said eventually. "What do you want to know?" "Her vulnerabilities. What scares her? What would hurt her most?" I thought about it. Failure. Looking foolish in public. She's built her whole identity around being successful, sophisticated, better than everyone else. She can't stand being seen as ordinary. Interesting. Porter's the same way. They're both so concerned with appearances that they've forgotten how to be real people. "Is that why you want revenge? Because he's fake?" Aven's expression hardened. "I want revenge because he promised me 15 years ago that I was enough, that he'd be faithful, honest, devoted. Instead, he's been screwing his way through half the city while I played the perfect wife. Why stay married to him? Because I was waiting for the right moment to take him apart." She smiled, cold and sharp. "That moment is now." I understood that feeling. The slow burn of betrayal, the careful planning, the patience required to do real damage. We were kindred spirits in our anger. "What do you need from me?" I asked. "Access to your wife's information, social media accounts, email, financial records, anything that can be used against her." "I don't have her passwords." "You'd be surprised what people leave lying around. Check her computer, her phone bills, her credit card statements. Look for patterns, connections, evidence of other affairs, or questionable behavior. You think she's been cheating with more than just Porter? I think your wife is an opportunist, and opportunists rarely limit themselves to one opportunity. That hit home. Cambria had always been ambitious, always looking for the next advantage, the next connection that could advance her career. If she'd crossed the line with Porter, who else had she crossed it with? There's something else, Aven continued. The annual Harbor Festival is this weekend. Big social event, lots of important people, perfect opportunity for public embarrassment. What kind of embarrassment? The kind that gets recorded and shared online, the kind that makes people unemployable in a small city like this. I liked where this was heading. You have a plan. I have the beginning of one, but I'll need your help to make it work. What do you need? I need you to be bait. Get Cambria and Porter to the festival. Make them think they can manipulate you. Get them to reveal their true nature in front of witnesses. That sounds dangerous. Only if you're not prepared. She leaned back in the booth. But I think you're more prepared than either of them realizes. She was right about that. 22 years of marriage had taught me a lot about Cambria's weaknesses, her tells, her pressure points. And 30 years of fixing broken things had taught me patience, precision, and the value of having the right tools for the job. When do we start? Tonight. I'll send you everything I have on Porter's finances. You dig into Cambria's background, look for anything we can use. We have 4 days to prepare. And then? Then we give them a festival they'll never forget. That evening, I sat in my workshop with Cambria's laptop, a bottle of beer, and a growing sense of betrayal that went deeper than just the affair. The laptop had been in her home office, a room I rarely entered because it was her space for important work. Important work, right. Her password was our anniversary date. Even after everything, that stung. The email account opened like a book of confessions. Months of correspondence with Porter, starting professional and gradually becoming personal, then intimate, then explicit. But Aven had been right. Porter wasn't the only one. There were flirtatious exchanges with at least 3 other men. A client named Davidson, who owned a restaurant chain, a city councilman named Torres, who was married with 4 kids, and someone called Jay, who signed his messages with just an initial, but clearly knew Cambria very well. I printed everything, organizing it by date and recipient. The pattern was clear. Cambria had been using her body as a business tool, trading intimacy for contracts, favors, and career advancement. My phone buzzed. Text from Aven. Found something interesting. Can you meet tomorrow morning? I texted back. Your place or mine? Neutral ground. Murphy's Diner, 8 a.m. I'll be there. I spent another hour going through Cambria's files. Her client list read like a who's who of Carrick Bay's power structure, and the personal notes she kept on each one were revealing. Blackmail material, basically. Information about affairs, financial problems, family scandals, all filed away for future use. She'd been playing a much bigger game than I'd realized. The next morning, Murphy's Diner was busy with the breakfast crowd. Aven was already there when I arrived, sitting in a back booth with coffee and what looked like a manila folder full of documents. You look like you didn't sleep, she said as I sat down. I spent the night learning things about my wife that I wish I could forget. That bad? I showed her printouts of the most damning emails. She read through them with the expression of someone who'd seen it all before. Your wife's been busy, she said finally. What did you find? She opened her folder and spread out bank statements, receipts, and photographs. Porter's been financing his affairs with embezzled client funds, but here's the interesting part. Some of those funds went directly to your wife. What do you mean? Consulting fees, paid to her PR firm for services that were never rendered. $25,000 over the past 6 months. I stared at the numbers. He was paying her? For exclusive access, apparently. Your wife's been charging him for the privilege of sleeping with her. That was somehow worse than the affair itself. It wasn't passion, or even midlife crisis stupidity. It was a business transaction. There's more, Aven continued. I traced some of these payments back to specific client accounts. Porter's been stealing from his own clients to pay for his entertainment. That's embezzlement. That's a felony, and your wife's been an accessory. The waitress came by for our order. I asked for coffee and toast, but my appetite was gone. Everything I'd thought I knew about Cambria was crumbling. How do we use this? I asked. Carefully. If we turn this over to the police now, they'll both get arrested, but the scandal will be contained. Better to let them think they're safe. Let them make more mistakes. What kind of mistakes? The kind that happen when desperate people try to cover their tracks. She gathered up the documents. I'm going to arrange a meeting with Porter. Tell him I want to negotiate a quiet divorce. Maybe even let him think I'm willing to be bought off. He'll suspect a trap. He'll suspect I'm greedy and weak. Men like Porter can't imagine women being anything else. And Cambria? Leave her to me. I have an idea that'll bring her running. We finished our coffee and prepared to leave. As we walked to the parking lot, Aven stopped and turned to me. Felix, are you sure you want to go through with this? Once we start down this path, there's no going back. These people will be destroyed. I thought about 22 years of marriage, about trust and loyalty and promises made in front of God and family, about coming home every night to a woman who was selling herself to other men while I fixed cars and dreamed of growing old together. They destroyed themselves, I said. We're just making sure everyone knows it. Good, because what I'm planning for the Harbor Festival will end them both. What do you have in mind? She smiled, and it was the coldest thing I'd ever seen. A public auction, and your wife's going to be the merchandise. I didn't ask what she meant. Some surprises are better experienced than explained. That afternoon, I got a call from Colby. Felix, we need to talk. Cambria's attorney contacted me about a settlement conference. What kind of settlement? The generous kind. She's offering to split everything 50-50, no alimony, clean break. That's not like her. No, it's not, which means she's scared. The question is, what's she scared of? I looked at the pile of evidence sitting on my kitchen table. Maybe she should be. The Harbor Festival was Carrick Bay's biggest event of the year, drawing thousands of visitors to the waterfront for 3 days of food, music, and local crafts. This year, it was going to be memorable for all the wrong reasons. Aven had been busy. Over the past 2 days, she'd arranged everything with the precision of a military operation. Porter thought he was meeting her for a private negotiation. Cambria thought she was attending a PR opportunity with a potential new client. Neither of them knew they were walking into an ambush. I arrived at the festival early, dressed in my best casual clothes and carrying a small recording device Aven had given me. The waterfront was already crowded with families, couples, and groups of friends enjoying the perfect September weather. You ready for this? Aven appeared beside me, looking elegant in a sundress that probably cost more than my truck payment. As ready as I'll ever be. Remember, we need them both here at the same time. Porter thinks he's meeting me at the beer garden at 2 o'clock. Cambria thinks her client meeting is at the craft pavilion at 2:15. And then? Then we let them hang themselves. The plan was simple but effective. Aven had created a fictional client, a wealthy widow looking to hire a PR firm to rehabilitate her late husband's reputation, the kind of high-paying, high-profile job that would make Cambria's career. The meeting was supposed to take place at the craft pavilion, right next to the beer garden where Porter would be waiting. At exactly 2 o'clock, I positioned myself where I could see both locations. Porter arrived first, looking nervous and checking his phone constantly. He'd lost weight since the suspension, and his usual confidence was replaced by the desperate energy of a man running out of options. Cambria showed up 5 minutes later, dressed to impress in a business suit that was completely inappropriate for a waterfront festival. She looked around the craft pavilion, clearly confused by the casual atmosphere. That's when Aven made her move. She approached Porter from behind, tapping him on the shoulder. "Hello, darling." His face went white. "Aven, I thought we were meeting privately." "We are. This is as private as it gets." She sat down across from him, her voice carrying clearly in the afternoon air. "I know about the embezzlement, Porter. I know about all of it." Meanwhile, I walked over to Cambria, who was still looking around for her fictional client. "Fancy meeting you here," I said. She spun around, startled. "Felix, what are you doing here?" "Same as you, I imagine. Looking for someone who doesn't exist." "What are you talking about?" "Mrs. Morrison. Your 2 o'clock appointment. She's not real, Cambria. Just like your marriage vows." Understanding dawned in her eyes, followed quickly by anger. "You set this up." "I had help." She looked around and spotted Porter sitting with Aven just 20 feet away. The beer garden and craft pavilion were close enough that conversations from one could be heard in the other, especially when voices started rising. "You want to ruin me," Porter was saying to Aven, loud enough for half the festival to hear. "I want you to face consequences," she replied. "Something you've never had to do before." Cambria started walking toward them, her heels clicking angrily on the wooden boardwalk. I followed, along with a growing crowd of curious festival-goers who sensed drama brewing. "Porter!" Cambria called out. "What's going on?" He looked up, saw her approaching, and his face somehow got even whiter. "Cambria, don't..." "Don't what?" "Don't ask why your wife is threatening you in public?" Aven stood up, smiling sweetly. "Oh, I'm not threatening him. I'm educating him about what happens when you steal from clients to pay for prostitutes." The word hung in the air like a thunderclap. Conversations around us stopped. People turned to stare. Someone pulled out a phone and started recording. "I'm not a prostitute," Cambria snapped. "Really? What do you call someone who accepts payment for intimate services?" Aven pulled out a folder and scattered bank statements across the table. $25,000 in 6 months. Not bad for part-time work. Porter tried to grab the papers, but Aven was faster. "These are private financial records." "Not anymore. I've already provided copies to the district attorney, the State Bar Association, and the Carrick Bay Gazette." The crowd was growing. Festival-goers pressed closer, sensing the kind of public meltdown that would be talked about for years. Phones appeared everywhere, recording every word, every expression, every moment of humiliation. "You can't do this to us," Cambria said, her voice rising to a near shriek. "I'm not doing anything to you," Aven replied calmly. "You did it to yourselves. I'm just making sure everyone knows about it." That's when Porter made his biggest mistake. Desperate and cornered, he tried to throw Cambria under the bus. "She seduced me," he shouted, pointing at my wife. "I never wanted any of this. She came after me, threatened to ruin my career if I didn't give her what she wanted." The crowd murmured. This was better than any soap opera. Cambria's face went through a series of expressions: shock, betrayal, rage, before settling on something I'd never seen before: pure hatred. "You lying piece of garbage," she snarled. "You begged me to sleep with you. You said you'd leave your wife, make me a partner in the firm." "That's not true." "You want to talk about truth?" Cambria reached into her purse and pulled out her phone. "Let's talk about the video you made. The one where you're telling me how much you love screwing me on your desk." The crowd gasped. Someone in the back shouted, "Play it!" And incredibly, in her rage and desperation, Cambria actually started to comply. She held up the phone, finger hovering over the play button. That's when I stepped in. "Cambria, don't." She looked at me, confused by my intervention. "Don't destroy what's left of your dignity," I said quietly. "You've lost enough already." For a moment, she looked like the woman I'd married 22 years ago. Vulnerable, uncertain, human. Then the moment passed. "Go to heck, Felix," she spat, and hit play. What followed was 3 minutes of audio that ended 2 careers and probably scarred half the children at the Harbor Festival for life. Porter's voice, unmistakably clear, describing in graphic detail what he wanted to do to my wife, followed by Cambria's equally explicit responses. The crowd stood transfixed, like witnesses to a car accident. Parents covered their children's ears, teenagers held up their phones, live streaming the destruction to social media. Local news reporters, who'd been covering the festival's opening day, suddenly had a much bigger story. When the recording ended, the silence was deafening. Porter had his head in his hands. Cambria stood frozen, phone still in her outstretched hand, finally realizing what she'd just done to herself. Aven broke the silence. "Well," she said conversationally, "I think that covers everything. Porter, you can expect criminal charges by Monday. Cambria, good luck finding work in this town." She gathered up her papers, kissed me on the cheek like an old friend, and walked away through the crowd. People parted for her like she was royalty. I looked at my wife, soon-to-be ex-wife, standing there in her expensive suit, surrounded by hundreds of people who now knew exactly what kind of person she was. 22 years, I said quietly. For this. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. What could she say? What excuse could possibly matter now? Porter stumbled to his feet and tried to leave, but the crowd had closed in. People were shouting questions, making accusations, demanding explanations. Someone had called the police, and I could hear sirens in the distance. "This is your fault!" Cambria suddenly screamed at me. "You did this! You ruined everything!" "I ruined everything?" I laughed, a sound with no humor in it. I wasn't the one screwing my boss for money. I wasn't the one lying for months. I wasn't the one who just played a recording of herself being a prostitute in front of half the city. I'm not a prostitute. Then what are you, Cambria? What do you call someone who trades intimacy for career advancement? Someone who accepts payment for services rendered? Someone who treats marriage vows like a business contract to be broken when a better offer comes along? She slapped me, hard, right across the face in front of hundreds of witnesses and dozens of cameras. I didn't hit back, didn't even raise my hand, just stood there and let her show everyone exactly who she really was. "Feel better?" I asked, my cheek stinging. She raised her hand to slap me again, but this time I caught her wrist. "Once was enough," I said. "We're done here." The police arrived and started dispersing the crowd. Porter was led away in handcuffs. Apparently, Aven had been busy with more than just planning public humiliation. The embezzlement charges were real, and the district attorney had been waiting for the right moment to make an arrest. Cambria tried to follow him, but the officers stopped her. She wasn't under arrest, but she was definitely a person of interest in an ongoing investigation. I walked away from it all, through the crowd of gawkers and phone cameras, back to my truck in the parking lot. Behind me, I could hear Cambria shouting my name, demanding that I come back, that I fix this somehow. But I was done fixing things for her. Some things, once broken, weren't worth repairing. The drive home was quiet except for the radio and the sound of my own breathing. I felt empty, drained, like I'd been carrying a heavy weight for so long that I'd forgotten what it felt like to put it down. My phone buzzed with text messages, friends who'd heard about the festival, reporters wanting comments, Colby asking if I was okay. I ignored them all. At home, I sat in my garage with a beer and looked at the Mustang I'd been restoring. Tomorrow, I'd probably have to deal with lawyers, reporters, and the aftermath of what had happened at the festival. But tonight, I just wanted to sit in the quiet and remember what it felt like to be alone without being lonely. Outside, the sun was setting over Carrick Bay, painting the harbor in shades of gold and red. It was beautiful, peaceful, normal, the kind of evening that made you grateful to be alive and free. My phone rang. Aven. "How are you holding up?" she asked. "Better than I expected. You?" "Satisfied. Porter's looking at 5 to 10 years for embezzlement. His law license is gone, his reputation is destroyed, and his assets are frozen pending restitution to his victims. And Cambria? Unemployable in this city, maybe anywhere once that video goes viral. She'll probably have to move somewhere nobody knows her and start over. That's not really punishment, that's just consequences. Sometimes consequences are punishment enough. We talked for a few more minutes about practical things, the divorce proceedings, the investigation, the media attention that would probably follow. Then she said something that surprised me. Felix, I want you to know, this wasn't just about revenge for me. It was about justice. People like Porter and Cambria think they can hurt others without consequences. Today, they learned otherwise. Do you feel better, now that it's over? I feel complete, like I finally finished something I should have done years ago. I understood that feeling. For months, I'd been living with the knowledge that my marriage was a lie, that the woman I loved was betraying me in the worst possible way. Today, that knowledge had become public truth. It hurt, but it also freed me. What happens now? I asked. Now we move on. We rebuild. We remember what it feels like to be honest people in an honest world. After she hung up, I sat in the garage until full darkness fell over Carrick Bay. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new complications, new opportunities, but tonight, for the first time in months, I felt like myself again. The Felix who'd been betrayed and humiliated was gone. In his place was someone stronger, wiser, and completely free. I raised my beer in a toast to the empty garage. Here's to new beginnings, I said aloud, and to the end of lies. Outside, the harbor lights twinkled like stars, and the future stretched out ahead of me like an open road.